Engineer Manuel is an engineer who dedicates himself to building all kinds of things. On one occasion, he is working for a transnational firm that has very many grocery stores, consumer stores, supermarkets throughout the country. And on that occasion, it has fallen to him to go to Sonora. It is in the north of Mexico. The climates are very extreme, the distances gigantic. Sonora is a very large state, very dry and very hot, and on top of that it has towns that are very far from one another. So the highway can be incredibly long, tiring, and there is not much traffic. That day, the engineer, together with his workers, prepares a real caravan to take material, tools, equipment, people to one of these jobs somewhere in Sonora. Early in the morning, they have left Hermosillo and begin to drive. The caravan is composed of a pair of 3.5-ton pickups with racks, that is, with these livestock-style boxes that are used a lot in construction. And they also carry a station wagon, a passenger vehicle of the Chevrolet Suburban brand, a large vehicle in which 10 people fit perfectly. They go on the highway, they arrive at a point along the way, they stop to eat. It's hot. When they get back into the vehicle, everyone settles in, those who are in the trucks as well. The fact is that at a certain point on the road, the heat, the tiredness, the monotony of a highway with very few variations, finally leads Manuel to fall asleep at the wheel. The rest of the people who go with him were also asleep, so no one notices. The moment the truck leaves the highway, it overturns and splits in two, or at least is damaged very badly. Fortunately, none of them die in the mishap. Even though the truck went rolling until it got over there to the scrub and some grasses, the people who were inside have been saved. Miraculously, they are a little bruised. Someone has a cut, scrapes, wounds. They are there, in the middle of the dust, still trying to understand what has happened, when a person approaches who asks them how they are. It is an older man who came out from around there to ask how they are. All good, all good. Well, they begin to see that this one is twisted, this one is bruised, but they can all get out. The other trucks, the cargo ones that have already arrived at that moment, quickly have the workers get down to help the others out. It is necessary to take them to a doctor, to a hospital. They may be very hurt, but the cargo trucks are full of things. Moreover, that older man who has come near makes a wise observation when he insists that the wrecked vehicle be moved from there and taken to the shoulder of the highway, to a spot to avoid their being accused of having damaged flora in danger, since in rolling several times the truck affected the vegetation. And, well, for such purpose, among all of them, they move the wrecked vehicle, what remains of the wrecked vehicle, and they place it over there in a sort of parking area that is a little hidden. It is not a parking lot, but a sort of bay that is at the edge of the highway. They place it there and settle it. But how to take the injured, the hurt ones? They decide to unload one of the trucks, put them up there, and take them to the nearest hospital. But obviously, leaving the tools and all that requires that someone stay. The engineer, very embarrassed because he is the one who has fallen asleep and has caused the accident, decides he will be the one who stays. He is the boss, his work team. He is the employer of these people. So he tells them to go to the nearest city. Take the injured people, have them checked well, everyone over there, and he is going to stay there guarding those materials they have unloaded. That older man who approached from the beginning tells him that he will accompany him, that he shouldn't worry, that he will be there with him. Those workers leave, they sit down at the side of the highway and they are chatting so pleasantly. That already older gentleman has such a pleasant conversation, so kind, so trusting, that he transmits that sensation of trust. It's very hot, so they place themselves in the shade of something, of a tree, of something that is there. There they are talking. After a while, or a long while later, they see in the distance that the truck, theirs, is arriving. Without thinking twice, he gets up, and among all of them they begin quickly to load that stuff. Fortunately, no one came out gravely injured. A little while later, a tow truck arrives that takes away the remains of the wrecked vehicle. They move to the nearest city to resolve some matters. Engineer Manuel says goodbye to Don Gabriel, that older man. Everything is very well. The next morning, a bit more recovered, having had breakfast and with things a little more organized, they set off. When they are arriving at the same point, the engineer stops, gets out. Nearby there was a gas station or something. He goes to look for Don Gabriel to thank him. He brings him some things, some gifts to thank him for the attention and the kindness, in addition to the good conversation. While they were chatting there the previous day, Don Gabriel had pointed out a small cabin that was over there in the middle of nowhere, saying that that was where he lived, but right now the engineer does not see it, so he goes up to one of the people who work there and asks, "Hey, Don Gabriel, the gentleman who lives back here in a cabin?" "No, well, no. What do you mean? That his little house was here, and he was here with us yesterday?" "No, we don't know who you're talking about." "Guys, did you see Don Gabriel, the very old gentleman who was with me, chatting and chatting?" And then one of the workers comes up and says, "Don Manuel, we saw you chatting, but I think only by yourself, because there wasn't anyone." "What do you mean there wasn't anyone?" "Well, the gentleman was here. He came up to help us." "No, well, we didn't see him." The other guy who was there, "No, I didn't see him either." "Well, you folks at the gas station?" "No, well, no, we don't know who you're talking about." And then, "Well, only God knows who you were with, boss." "I don't know. The cabin was there. I saw it." A cabin. And he goes around behind, above, below. There was nothing. There simply wasn't anything. Our dear Manuel the engineer was left with the doubt forever. What was it that he saw that day? For many, perhaps a roadside ghost. For others, perhaps only a guardian angel who readied himself to accompany him at a moment of difficulty. What do you think? But how we would love it if all the tales were that beautiful. Stories that have a happy ending and a mystery behind them, but in the end with a positive message. However, most of the time the stories, and for that reason, let me tell you this other one. One fine day, a little girl of 7 years old is about to celebrate her birthday. It is the 7th birthday. It's not just anything. She is a tremendous little girl. She is truly restless. She has 2 older brothers, one about 14 and one about 13 years old. So the example to follow is not exactly very feminine nor very sweet and affectionate. She is a little girl whom her mother strives enormously to make look like a princess. The ponytails in her hair, the dress, the patent leather shoes. But 10 minutes later, the ponytails went flying. That dress of lace and petticoats that itch and cause itching ended up over there, and she puts on pants or shorts or something that allows her to run out and play. She is tremendously mischievous. As for dolls, those Barbie things are not a very good idea because the few she had on hand she ended up cutting their hair. They looked bad with hair that long, so she cut their hair. It generated a conflict with her mother, who had tachycardia from seeing how she had cut the doll's hair. But in her opinion, they looked better that way. So she was an intrepid little girl. She liked to ride a bicycle. When her father went out running to exercise, the little girl, without hesitation, took out the bicycle, and that was the moment when she would catch up to him, happy with life, full of joy, with a mindset a little different from that of the others. But at the end of the day, a person with a bright future. That birthday, the different invited people began to arrive, and of course the godfather and the godmother arrived. A married couple close to the family whom her parents held in great esteem. So, of course, they were invited, and when they arrived, they brought an impressive gift. The problem is that everyone realized that it was the inadequate gift for this girl, because it was a beautiful doll, almost life-size. It was an enormous doll, almost the size of the 7-year-old girl with blonde hair, similar to that of the child I am describing. But besides that, it had shoes, its dress. It was strangely similar to the birthday girl, and it had this odd smile that seemed so sweet, with those old-style doll eyes that, when you lay it back, close a little. That was her doll. To the amazement of Dad, Mom, the brothers, and the other acquaintances, the doll was very well received, and it was very well received in every sense. The stuffed animal that had always accompanied her ended up on the shelf there, put away because the doll would now occupy a special place on the bed. It was an extremely expensive gift, that was clear. These types of dolls are not common and they are not cheap. It may have been custom ordered. Because of the beauty, the size, the clothing, because of all that. It could have been custom ordered, which was unusual. Although the family of this little girl, whom we will call only Mia, is a family that is in a good situation, that does not mean that the godparents are the same. For that time, this region did not tend to be so prosperous. Therefore, at that moment it was astonishing. But behind it, there was an intention. You see, the godfather and the godmother were a couple who frequently asked for things, and a short time before they had asked Mia's parents for a loan. Afterward, they had asked for another loan that they also did not pay, and finally, at the end of the party, they approached to ask for another loan. They already knew they were going to ask for the loan. They had asked for an extraordinary amount of money, but Mia's parents were only able to lend a smaller amount, and even if they had had a larger one, they had already decided to lend less because they did not see the possibility of repayment. Even so, with good intentions, they made the loan, which greatly annoyed the godfather and the godmother, who had evidently spent a fortune on that beautiful doll and expected to receive a larger loan. Annoyed, they left the house. During the following days, the girl is delighted with her doll. It is her fascination. She arrives and places it there on her bed, and when she is going to go to bed, she places it to one side, and when she has to go to school, she puts it on the pillow. Her fascination. However, after this week, things begin to take on a slightly different character, and that is because the girl begins to have dreams, strange dreams. The first of them is a dream in which she arrives at her school, where she has always gone. It is a school of nuns. It has a very pretty chapel with its pews. When she arrives, she observes that there is a kind of large glass urn, and inside there is a Christ. But when she approaches the image, ceases to be a Christ and becomes something very ugly. It begins to deform, it begins to deflesh. Something begins to come out of the head that at first she dreams of as if it were horns, and all that becomes very strange. The smell in her dream ceases to be the smell of candles and incense and becomes a cadaverous, putrid smell, a nauseating smell. The little girl in that particular dream begins to run, fleeing the place, but the more she tries to run, the dream becomes desperate because she does not advance. She cannot advance as if a force were pulling her. It is a classic nightmare dream. It is terrible. This nightmare begins to become much more intense when she feels in the middle of the dream that a force is pulling her. And in spite of her trying to run and advance, it is dragging her back toward that place where she has seen that horrible deformed figure. The fact is that at that moment she begins to scream and wakes up screaming frantically. She is 7 years old. She is in her own bedroom, in her bed, sitting up in the early hours, bathed in tears, screaming, when her father comes in. Of course, he holds her, he hugs her, he lifts her up, he takes her to his room, he lays her down with her mother. She wouldn't shut her eyes all night. She would remain sitting on the bed with a single fixed idea. The doll, even though in the dream the doll did not appear, even though in this nightmare there was no presence. When she woke up screaming, the doll seemed to her to be in a different place from where she had left it and was looking at her. This caused her great fear. The dream would be repeated several times, and on each occasion she would wake up screaming, horrified, full of panic. The parents went to look for the godparents at some point to talk about the matter of payment, since they had agreed on a series of dates, but that unleashed a series of very ugly comments. The godparents had been speaking very badly of the family. When they went to look for them, there was an offensive response. The parents decided to leave it like that. Better to lose the money and leave it there, but with the sadness of having lost a friendship because even if you don't believe it, they held those people in great affection. They would not see them again. Back at home, things continue to be strange, because this very small 7-year-old girl has the clear idea that that doll moves. Of course, her mother laughs. "No, daughter, dolls don't move." The father says, "It's your imagination. It looks so real that you imagine it moves." The problem is that this girl starts to realize this, but she also realizes through these horrible dreams that something is not right. The dream changes after some time. That horrible nightmare changes, and now the nightmare. She is not very sure whether it is a nightmare or a dream, because at times this 7-year-old girl, Mia, thinks it is real, but she cannot be sure, because now that her parents no longer let her be in their room, she has heard in the early morning, at some moment, she is not sure at what moment, but she hears how the doll that she has left in front of her, 1.5 meters away on a piece of furniture, climbs down. She hears how it falls and afterward hears the little footsteps and then feels a tugging at the blanket. The tugging continues as if it were climbing, and then she feels those softer little footsteps on top of the bedspreads as it comes toward her. The dream, if it is a dream, is so real that it makes her scream again. When Dad appears, obviously the doll seems to be in the same place, except that certain positions change slightly. Only she notices this because she is the one who has been placing it. She isn't dumb, so she has prepared. And each night before going to sleep, the doll is placed there in front in a certain position, with the hands in a certain position, the shoes put on very well, and the gaze in a certain position. She memorizes this so that when she wakes up in the early morning, frightened, screaming, she can check. And indeed, the face is turned another way. The hands are in another position. This is relatively frequent. It gets to the point that before going to school she closes her bedroom door, locks it with a key. The only key there is she has hanging from her neck. Her parents go to their business and the bedroom remains totally closed. Nobody enters, nobody leaves. But before doing that, she always places the doll, making sure of the position in which she has left it. To her surprise, as Mia herself describes today, many years later, when she would come back, the doll was not in the place where she had left it, nor in the way she had left it, and it begins to seem to her that the smile that at first seemed so tender has now turned into something horrible. As the days pass, the mood and health of this adventurous and dynamic little girl begin to deteriorate to the point that even when Dad looks in and says, "Hey, let's go, with hair that long. For a run. You coming?" So she cut their hair. She does not go. It generated a conflict with her mother, who at another time, the fact that Dad went out to run was the moment of recreation, of joy, of jubilation. But this goes further. This situation is somehow solidifying with other phenomena that occur. You see, in a traffic accident, the grandmother dies. The grandfather is left very seriously injured, so now there are more worries. The situation in the family declines, and this affects the economy, which adds to the pressure, and a 7-year-old little girl who says her doll moves is not a priority. And it is so not a priority that she begins to stop eating, begins to suffer fevers. She has to go to the hospital. They determine that she has anemia and many other things until finally one fine day she speaks with her mother. She says, "The doll scares me a lot. I don't want it." She speaks with Dad and tells him. In a twist of fate, the two of them seem to have perceived something, so they put the doll aside and allow little Mia to sleep with them in their bedroom again. The doll would be wrapped up and placed in a secret corner, hidden and difficult to access. The days go by. The dreams begin to blur. Little by little they go away, little by little they go away, and she recovers time, recovers health, recovers her spirits, and when she turns 8 they give her something incredible. A dog. And the dog would become her guardian, her companion, her strength. When she returns to her own bedroom to sleep, they allow the dog to sleep with her, which gives her confidence. The little animal does not leave her side, and at times it seems to be a fierce guardian that gets into a defensive posture before nothing, and then returns and continues accompanying her. You will ask yourself, and what happened to the doll? Point number 1. The doll remains kept in the same place at the back of a closet, far from anyone's sight. They did not destroy it. Nobody wanted to touch it. The mother did not want to destroy it. She maintains that it brings back memories of Mia's childhood and that she keeps it put away so that it does not deteriorate. It is probable that there is something more. There is a secret, but we do not know. The only thing that is clear to us is that there was a story behind it, and an excellent story of a cursed doll. What could that have been? There are many possibilities. This doll was part of a ritual. It had been consecrated. It was an object that had been handled within a ritual of magic, of black magic. It had been consecrated as such. Perhaps a revenge. Perhaps something that was created expressly to cause harm. I do not know. But another phenomenon could also occur there, that the doll itself already had it, and simply the anxiety, the nervousness were part of it. It is difficult to know. Now then, how to destroy that? There are 2 or 3 options. The doll could be taken to a place where it would be blessed in a ritual of liberation. Objects cannot be possessed by a demonic entity because they have no soul, but they can be infested. They can be surrounded by a presence or a kind of spirit that could animate them, move them, turn them, make them. The doll. As such, it is not possessed, but there is something that moves it. There is something that changes its place and puts on that pantomime of being alive. The blessing and the rite of liberation, an exorcism of things as it is known, would be very necessary before trying to destroy it, in such a way that whatever is surrounding the object be sent back to the place to which it belongs, and the object be left inert, and then yes, it would be safe to destroy it. At least, that is what we would think about it.